and you were talking about owning Bitcoin in self-custody versus owning something like MicroStrategy. So just to go straight into the weeds of what we should be investing in, like what were you trying to think about and why is that important to you? And just run us through what you were thinking.
I think that was last November probably, and it was more that I was calling the top in MicroStrategy versus Bitcoin, like denominated in Bitcoin.
Mm.
It started off like, is it maybe year and a half, 2 years ago? I was talking to my Bitcoiner friends, and I said, I mean, I do like what this sailor guy is doing. I like him borrowing money against his shares and buying Bitcoin. And I think that's a valuable exercise. So, in fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to borrow some dollars against my Bitcoin, buy MicroStrategy shares with it, and see how those shares do against Bitcoin. And then, of course, we had that phenomenal rise in MicroStrategy going up, and it went up quicker than Bitcoin. It went up, it doubled, it tripled. And I think last November, MicroStrategy hit like 500. And then I was like, this seems a bit outrageous. They're like triple the value of their Bitcoin holdings. And surely that will bring in competition. Like basically, if you can just buy gold or Tesla or something and then have sort of a leverage ratio that makes you like 300% more than the underlying asset, that's just going to bring in competition. So I thought, look, they're not inventing magic. For every $1 billion worth of Bitcoin that they have, they cannot be worth 3 billion because then it could be the same for you and me. If you borrow $1 million and buy, $1 million worth of Bitcoin, it doesn't mean that you're worth 3 million all of a sudden. So I figured, let's look into the future because then you had like Preston Bish and all these guys saying that MicroStrategy is going to go to 3,000 and whatnot. Yeah, well, that's six times from 500. I don't think Bitcoin is going to move. I don't think it's going to move away from Bitcoin. I don't think MicroStrategy is going to be worth 5 times their Bitcoin holdings or 10 times their Bitcoin holdings. So I thought what I should do is get out of my MicroStrategy and just go straight back to Bitcoin and wait for the market to essentially arbitrage the premium back to less. And I looked at it now this morning, and of course, Bitcoin's off its high, but it's only about 20% off its high. And MicroStrategy is about 40% off its high.
Mm.
So I think I did pretty well out of it.
Awesome. First of all, like figuring out Bitcoin and being like, holy shit, this thing is going to grow from a capital perspective in a way that is likely to outpace basically everything. And so if you get
Yep.
enough capital into Bitcoin and self-custody, you just got to sit back and enjoy the ride. Now that's easier said than done. But there are also opportunities to reallocate out of Bitcoin into other things should you have the sophistication to ride those other things for the correct periods of time. And if you've got the right tools in the toolbox, then absolutely this is what investors can do. And what you've just described is a technique that actually I hadn't heard anyone do up till now. More common strategies might be like, I think Ethereum is going to outpace Bitcoin for this 6 months, and they jump on an
Yeah, yeah,
altcoin or
yeah,
something.
yeah.
Um, but actually taking debt against your Bitcoin position and buying a publicly traded equity, that's not been all that possible to do. I think probably maybe
No.
until you've just done it. So maybe that's the first time in history that's ever been done. I don't know. But to ask, I guess, a little further then, how often are you looking for alternative opportunities to just holding in Bitcoin self-custody? And what might be some other things you look at, or is this just one?
No, no, I have to do it. I've been in the Bitcoin a long time. Back in 16, I got FOMO for the halving coming up back in 16. And I was like, look, I got to sell my house. I got to sell my chairs. I got to be, all in Bitcoin. So I've been all in Bitcoin, was it like,
It's
yeah,
almost
about
10
8 years
years.
now?
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty well. I've been in Bitcoin longer than that, but I've been all in for about 8 years. And I still, like, my biggest fear is to end the year with less Bitcoin than I started. And I
Mm.
don't really mind fiat or anything. So every year I have to figure out how to turn my Bitcoin into more Bitcoin,
Mm.
which is, crucial. So at the beginning of each year, I try and identify opportunities, like basically in the bear market, I might look at buying what's like the blockstream mining node, where you buy Bitcoin miners and you keep them essentially wrapped up, hoping for a bull market in Bitcoin when their price of the miners will increase faster than Bitcoin itself. But what I mostly do is I trade options, derivatives, which, I don't think you can even do when you're Australian because the Australian government doesn't like you trading on Deribit. But in my options trading, I look at essentially Bitcoin being quiet for a while, and I see it as the quiet before the storm. Whereas, Black-Scholes option traders models say, look, the past predicts the future. If Bitcoin is flat for a while, it will likely stay flat, and therefore the options get undervalued. Whereas I think if Bitcoin is flat for a while, it's just going to break out. So then, in the quiet before the storm, I try and buy some call options, so that when it does break out, I actually get some more Bitcoin. At the same time, I feel tremendous emotional pain, so to speak, if there's a dip. So in dips, what I try to do is borrow dollars against my Bitcoin to essentially buy more Bitcoin as
Mhm.
a loan, which I then pay off once the dip has recovered. And then I feel I've been rewarded for the dip, and I've hodled through the dip and actually got some more Bitcoin out of it. So every year it's a new round, it's a new game to make sure that I can cover my living expenses for the year, and at the same time not end the year with less Bitcoin, because the number one rule in life is end each year with more Bitcoin.
Mm. Wow. And I mean, something I'm guilty of is as I watch the purchasing power of my Bitcoin position increase in dollar terms, you feel richer. And so it's like, well, why don't I just sell
Yeah,
some Bitcoin because I need it for life? Now, I'm not against selling Bitcoin, but what you're just describing is the more prudent way to approach things. Is i.e., you want to finish the year with your Bitcoin balance bigger than what you started, regardless of the fiat price.
yeah.
Um, Things crop up, you have expenses, you might have to sell. But yes, in an ideal world,
Yeah,
I would follow a similar strategy to yourself.
I think like there's nothing, the opportunity cost of everything is Bitcoin. Like there's nothing worth investing in more than Bitcoin, not gold, not art, not cars or something. At the same time, there's a lot of very good stuff in life that you need to buy because you love it. I wouldn't invest in real estate, but I want to invest in a home.
Mm,
I don't want to invest, in classic cars for collector's value, but I do want to invest in a Land Cruiser to go around Australia. So invest in things you love, and
mm.
then be prudent, make sure that you don't buy things that lose value. But, opportunity cost of everything is Bitcoin. So at the end of the day, nothing beats investing in that for the financial returns.